So, after authority, the important concept to be studied is power. As already told, power is something which is very welcome, students, to the fifth part of Unit 1. In the previous class, we have discussed the organization structure. Then we have discussed organization charts, how organization structure helps in forming organization chart, and how the authority flows in organization charts. Then we have seen the various examples of organization charts, steps in steps in structuring the organization, then the various organization theories, classical organization theory, what are the principles and postulates and criticism against classical theory. Then the second one is new classical organization theory, where we discussed about the contribution made and the criticism against new classical theory. And the third one is modern organization theory, the features and the criticism therefore. Then we discussed about departmentalization, how departments are formed, how departments help in the administrative process of an organization, and the various methods of departmentalization. Today we are going to discuss about authority, power, organizational effectiveness, and organizational change. So first, let us understand what is authority. As stated in this slide, we can see that authority is defined as the right to give orders, to supervise the work, and make certain decisions. It is linked with the managerial position to give orders and to expect them to follow the orders. In earlier days, it was the basic element that made organizations smoothly work. The authority was delegated from top to bottom of the organizational hierarchy. Every manager possessed some or the other authority. There are various types of authority according to his designated position. It is related to a specific position a person holds, and his personal characteristics are ignored against his authority. Even if a position becomes vacant in the organization, but still it remains attached. There are various types of authority in management: line authority, staff authority, and functional authority. So, authority is nothing but the right to give orders, to supervise the work, and take certain decisions for the achievement of organizational objectives. What is line authority? The work of an employee is directed with the help of line authority. It takes the form of employer employee relationship that moves from top to bottom. Certain decisions are made by the line manager without consulting any other person. In some cases, line managers are differentiated from staff managers by the word line. The manager, whose functions are linked directly with the achievement of organizational objectives, is called a line manager. So, therefore, line authority is nothing but the work an employee is directed. It takes the form of employer employee relationship. So, here the core functions of the organization, in the core function of the organizations, if the authority flows, that is called line authority. Okay, and it is directly related to the achievement of organizational objectives. Second one is staff authority. Staff authority is possessed by the staff managers. The objectives of the organization determine the line and staff nature of the functions of any manager. When the size of the organizations become larger and larger, the line managers feel that they cannot complete their jobs by the existing skills, experience, and knowledge, which are not updated accordingly. Therefore, staff authority is generated for the staff whose main purpose is to assist, support, advise, and decrease the work burden of the line managers. So, staff authority is something the authority given to the managers who are not directly linked to the achievement of organizational objectives. They are there in the organization because of the skills and experience and knowledge, and they help the line managers to take decisions. Functional authority. This is the third type of authority. Functional authority is also known as functional control, and it is included in the area of line and staff aspects of HRM, as it is the special authority that is exercised by the personnel manager in coordinating the personal activities. The HR manager here performs his functions as right arm of the supreme executive. So here functional authority is the authority that lies because of the functions or tasks done by that particular employee. The best example is the HR manager. Even a finance manager might be having some functional authority. They have the authority to take key decisions based on the inputs given by the top management. It all depends on the functions they are carrying forward in the organization. Therefore, all these authorities, varieties, types of authorities are nothing but to achieve the organizational objectives. Now, going further, how is authority generated? Authority will come when power is given to an individual or an employee. So, let us discuss what is power. Power is the ability to influence other people. It refers to the capacity to affect the behavior of the subordinate with the control of resources. It is an exchange relationship that occurs in transactions between an agent and a target. The agent is the person who uses the power, the target is the recipient of the power. So therefore here we have two parties. So power is nothing but the ability to influence people. We usually use this term called powerful people or powerful people. Why do you use this word? Power is nothing but power is something which influences people. So therefore power is something which is very important in actually. Power is very important, and there are various types of related concepts in the very important to influence people and get things done. So there are three concepts which are interrelated and interlinked: the power, authority, and influence. Power is the ability to influence someone else. Influence is the process of affecting thoughts, behavior, and feelings of another person. Authority is the right to influence another person. Authority is a legitimate right, it is legal, it is something which is formal. So, therefore, authority, power, and influence are all interconnected terms. So, therefore, they are mostly used interchangeably in organizations. So, today let us understand what is authority and why authority is legitimate. It is the right, authority is nothing but it is the right to influence the actions of other people. Okay, and authority is legitimate while power is not. Sometimes, in your class, maybe there will be one class representative who might be having the authority to take the decision, whereas there are few people who has the power to influence the decisions of the classmates. So authority and power are different. Authority confers legitimacy to power, but power itself need not be legitimate. Okay, so therefore this is all about power, authority and influence. Going forward, the next topic is sources of power. There are five sources of power. From where does an individual get power? Reward power, coercive power, legitimate power, referent power, expert power. Reward power, it is based on the agent's manager's ability to control the rewards the target employee wants. It is common. For example, managers control rewards for salary increase, promotions, bonuses, etc. The power is based on old saying that wealth is power. Okay, so when you have something which other people usually don't have, then you'll be having that power. Next one is coercive power. Coercion, by force. Okay, so it is opposite of reward power. It is based on a manager's ability to cause an unpleasant experience for its people, forcibly influencing people and getting things done is coercive power. In organizational setup, it may be in the form of action for or threat for dismissal, suspension, or demotion. For example, labor unions, union leader. Okay, they might be having coercive power. Next one is legitimate power. Legitimate power is based on the position and mutual agreement. Maybe the CEO of the company has legitimate power. The manager of production department has legitimate power. So it is by authority that person will be having the power. Both the agent and target agree that the agent has the right to influence the employees. It is in the form of authority which is delegated to the position of organizational members or employees. And the fourth type is referent power. Referent power, it's an elusive power that is based on interpersonal attraction. Charismatic individuals are often thought to have referent power, influencing people by their charisma so that they take decisions based on their influence. Here, people take somebody as ideal and behave according to their certain stage. Okay, so if someone refers something, you act upon it because the person who is referring actually is very close to you or you trust them. Okay, so this is called referent power. Next one is expert power. Expert power exists when the agent has information or knowledge that the target needs. It is based on the proverb, knowledge is power. Three conditions to be fulfilled are: the target must trust the information given by the agent is accurate and correct. The information should be relevant and useful to the target. The target must consider the agent as an expert. So therefore, these are the five types of power: reward power, coercive power, legitimate power, referent power, and expert power. The next topic is, so therefore these are the sources of power. But how can you acquire power? Okay, so through extraordinary work. When you do something which is special or something which others don't do, then you can acquire power. When you do things and people see, observe and get influenced, then definitely that is acquisition of power. Or cultivate the right people, or through coalitions or through co-opting, so therefore power is generated. Okay, so there are various ways in which the employees might feel powerless at that time. There are few areas or few symbols or which signify that there is powerlessness, like an individual who can pull someone off a jam has power. ability to get placement, exceeding budget limits, procuring above average raise for employees, getting items done on own terms, access to early information, to top managers seeking out opinion. So therefore these are the various ways how power can be there. But powerlessness, sometimes employees face powerlessness too, like for example overly close supervision of work, inflexible adherence to rules, and a tendency to do the jobs themselves rather than training the subordinates. When staff professionals feel powerless, they resist change, and therefore there will be problem in achieving the objectives. So the key to overcome powerlessness is to share power, empowerment, and delegate tasks to subordinates. Now, this is all about power. Now, let us go ahead and understand what is organizational effectiveness. Organization and effectiveness. See, there are two terms which are related to productivity: effectiveness and efficiency. Effectiveness means doing right things, efficiency means doing things right. So which one is better? Efficiency is somewhat having lesser prominence compared to effectiveness. So effectiveness says that we have to do the things, sorry, right things from initially. If you do right things, definitely the objectives will be achieved with optimal resources. So therefore organizational effectiveness is what is sought after among employees nowadays. Organizational effectiveness can be defined as the efficiency with which an association is able to meet its objectives. It means that an organization that produces a desired effect, or an organization that is productive without waste. Organizational effectiveness is about each individual doing everything they know how to do and doing it well. In other words, organizational efficiency is the capacity of an organization to produce the desired results with a minimum expenditure of energy, time, money, and human and material resources. The desired effect will be depending on the goals of the organization, which could be, for example, making a profit by producing and selling a product. An organization, if it operates efficiently, will produce a product without waste. If the organization has both organizational effectiveness and efficiency, it will achieve the goal of making profits and maximizing the resources. In economics and business scenario, this may be referred to as maximizing the profit. So therefore, the ultimate goal of an organization and its employees is to achieve organizational effectiveness. The next topic is elements of organizational effectiveness. What are the various elements? How can we achieve organizational effectiveness? First one is strategy. Strategy is nothing but long term plan of an organization is strategy. So it includes the role, the purpose, the direction, the inclination of the organization. It should be very clear, appropriate, and it should be communicated exactly. So strategy, whenever the word strategy comes to your mind, it means long term plan. The second element is structure and capacity and capability. Capable people doing the right work through a fit for purpose structure and clearly described role, accountabilities, and relationships. The organization structure should be having the capability of trickling down the authority in the hierarchy. Third one is leadership. Leaders play a crucial role in achieving organizational effectiveness. It is like the captain of the ship. If the captain knows everything, definitely the ship will lead to the shore. So therefore leaders have the capability and capacity to drive sustainable business goals and success. The fourth element is people, system, and processes. Leaders need to be supported by good people. If you are a good leader, if there is a good leader but they are not good followers, then the team will not perform or the organization will not perform. So therefore, leaders need to be supported by good people, systems and processes. These systems and processes work in organizations to send messages, share information and make well informed decisions across the business. Organizational processes and systems are an extension of leadership, creating consistency and trust. So, therefore, leaders need to be supported by good people, able people, efficient people, and a very good system, integrated system and processes. And the next one is culture and values, the fifth element of organizational effectiveness. What is culture? It's a base set of basic assumptions about how to behave and carry out the work within the organization, and it is aligned to business strategy. The systems, the symbols, the behaviors, the leaders, the employees exposed within an organization is nothing but culture. So the culture of the organization should align with the business strategy. Next, the sixth element is employee engagement. There are high numbers of engaged employees whose hearts and minds are aligned with both the job that they do and the organization they work for. Engaged employees are satisfied with their current job and their organization as an employer, committed to making the job and organization successful, proud of their organization and the work they do, willing to positively talk about their job and the organization. And last one is customer experience. The last element is customer experience. The organization works to satisfy the customers. Without customers there is no organization. So when the customer experience is good, then definitely organization will achieve effectiveness. So therefore, high level of employees being of customer satisfaction and loyalty achieved through employees being aware of customer needs, acing on feedback and being supported to deliver what customers require. So therefore, feedbacks are very much required so that the customer needs can be fulfilled and the value can be delivered. Organizations are environmentally responsible and support the community. So therefore, these are the seven elements of organizational effectiveness: strategy, structure, capacity and capability, leadership, people, system and processes, culture and values, employee engagement, and customer experience. So, therefore, there are many ways to measure effectiveness of an organization, like many factors contribute to organizational effectiveness. Different experts have cited different ways of measuring effectiveness. Effectiveness is in accomplishing the purpose. Efficiency is in acquisition and using the scarce resources. The source of satisfaction to the owners or the employers and the employees and the customers and the society and therefore the stakeholders, adaptive to new opportunities and obstacles, capable of developing the ability of its members and for itself, capable of survival in a world of uncertainty. So therefore, these may be the ways or criteria for organizational effectiveness. So with this we finish the last but one topic of unit 1. The next topic is organizational change. What is change? Change is something which means that we are moving from one state to another state. Change is very very crucial so that there is growth and development in an organization. Change is the only constant in this world. Now look at organizational change. Organizational change is both the process in which an organization changes its structure, strategies, operational methods, technologies, or organizational culture to affect change within the organization and the effects of these changes on the organization. Organization change refers to the alteration of such structural relationships in the work environment. It is an important element in most of the organizations. It develops adaptability and also increases the chance of success. in the organization. It brings innovation, it brings something new to the organization, which in turn improves the organization. Organizational change is inevitable in a progressive culture. Modern organizations are highly dynamic, versatile, adaptive to the multiplicity of changes. You can see around the world companies like Google and what Microsoft, or you can say Intel, all these Apple, all these companies are flourishing only because they are changing themselves according to the industrial or business expectations. When you look at Zoom, it's a company which is into video conferencing tools. So Zoom is something now which is very much synonymous to video conferencing. So it has changed itself. The company has changed itself to meet the demands. Its products meet the demands of the customer. So therefore, it brought change, and therefore now it is one of the best video conferencing tool used by businesses as well as normal users. Now, what are the causes of change? Change can happen when there is external pressure, and change can happen when there is internal pressure. When there is external pressure, there could be change in technology and equipment. Advancements in technology are the major causes of change. Each technological alternative results in new forms of organization to meet and match the needs. This next one is market situation. Changes in market situation includes rapidly changing goals, needs and desires of consumers, suppliers, unions, etc. If an organization has to survive, it has to cope with changes in market situations. Next one is social and political change. Organizational units literally have no control over social and political changes in the country. Relations between government and business or drive for social equality are some factors which may compel for organizational change. Next, the second part of the discussion here is internal pressure. How internal forces within an organization pressurize the organization for change. What are those pressures? What are those factors? First one is changes in the managerial personnel. One of the most frequent reasons for major changes in the organization is change of executives at the top. No two managers have the same style, skills, or managerial philosophies. Deficiencies in the existing organization could also be one internal reason. So, therefore, a change is necessary to remove those deficiency, as lack of uniformity in the policies, obstacles in communication, any ambiguity, etc. Certain other factors such as listed below also demand a change, like employees' desire to share in decision making, employees' desire for higher wage rate, improvement in working conditions. So these could also be internal pressures which might develop a change in an organization. Now we'll go further and discuss about the process of organizational change. When there is a need for a change in the organization, there should be change in the behavior of people. So how can we change the behavior of people? It is through three: unfreezing, changing, refreezing. These are the three important stages of change. Okay, so a change can be possible only through these three stages. What is unfreezing? Unfreezing is when there is a change in an organization. Unfreezing phase comes at the primary level. So here all the factors, beliefs, feelings, behavior related to the current situation are realized. Once convinced, people may change their behavior. Reward for those willing to change and punishment for those may help in this matter. Then changing. Once convinced and ready to change, an individual under this phase learns to behave in a new way. He is first provided with the model in which he is to identify himself. Gradually, he will accept that model and behave in the manner suggested by the model. In another process known as internalization, the individual is placed in a situation where new behavior is demanded of him if he is to operate successfully. And the last stage is refreezing. During this phase, a person has to practice and experiment with a new method of behavior and see that it effectively blends with his other behavioral attitudes. Reinforcement for creating a permanent set in the individual is provided through either continuous or intermittent schedules. So therefore, unfreeze, change, refreeze are the three important and basic elements of a organizational change process. But before this, the manager, when he is going for change, he should realize what kind of response will he get among the people. People work harder than before. Sometimes people might quit the organization. Sometimes they might become sullen or slow down, and they work as hard as before. There could be outcomes where more output than before. Maybe there could be output that could be reduced, or output can be same. So sometimes there will be positive effect on the when the change is being imbibed in the organization. There could be a positive effect, and sometimes there will be a negative effect. So now let us go further and see, as we discuss about the change process. Now, resistance to change. Okay, no organization or any organization will not change unless there is a resistance. People resist change because they like monotony. See, the needs of people differ according to their circumstances, according to their situations. So here, resistance to organizational change, industrial resistance, organizational resistance. There could be economic reasons, there could be personal reasons, there could be social reasons. Economic reasons are, maybe they might feel that there will be a financial loss, maybe they'll lose the job, or maybe they will not have any value in the organization. That's why people might resist change. Or there could be some personal reasons like ego defensiveness. They feel that ego will come in between, then status quo. Okay, they don't want to change the status quo. Then fear of unknown, they might not know what will be the outcome of the change. They are unaware, uninformed, not miscommunicated, so therefore they might resist change. There could be social reasons, like there could be peer pressure. Maybe the individual wants change, but because of the people around him, he might feel the peer pressure. And there could be some social displacement too. So therefore, these are the various industrial resistance to change. Then organizational resistance, there could be grapevine, that is informal communication running in the organization where they resist change and influence one another. There could be monotony, because of they liked monotony, so they don't want to change. There could be miscommunication, like if this change is brought in the organization, then there will be some kind of problem to the employees, so therefore the employees resist change. So these are the various categories of resistance to organizational change: industrial resistance and organizational resistance. But how can we overcome these resistance to change? Is there any possibility to resist the organizational change? Yes, there is a possibility. When employees don't want to change, we can, I mean, the management or the department or the people involved in bringing that change can educate and communicate the clear objectives and goals of the change. They can make them participate in the change process. They can involve them. They can ask them to engage in the change process. Then they'll come to know why exactly the organization needs change. And also there could be a kind of support system that also helps in changing. And if in sometimes if individuals are involved in changing, then sometimes incentives can also be given to the employees by the management, because they have accepted the change or embraced the change. There could be manipulation by the management for the change, or coercion, that is by forcibly putting pressure, change can happen. So these are the various things which come under organizational change. So therefore, with this we finish the first unit of industrial psychology subject, and this is the part 5. So let us now revise what we have done today. Today we discussed Authority, types of authority, power, distinction between power, authority, and influence, sources of power, reward power, coercive power, legitimate power, preferent power, expert power, organizational effectiveness, elements of organizational effectiveness, organizational change, causes of organizational change, process of organizational change, resistance to organizational change, and how to overcome resistance to organizational change. So this is with what we have to finish our fifth unit. Thank you very much, students.